Well, judging by the topic, I first want to thank everybody for being here. This is a challenging time of day to be here. We're all exhausted. You've got a chair, you can get off your feet for a few minutes and think about something that's not stressful, like all the employees lined up to come work for your company, right? So before we start, I would like to just ask real quick, what is your biggest workforce problem? Shout out. If you could wave your magic wand and solve that problem today, you would be tickled. What would it be?
Educated individuals that are willing to be there for 40 hours.
So you want qualified workers with work ethic and they show up?
I'd really love if I could qualify them.
You could have qualified workers. Okay, that'd be good. They could show it up maybe. What else? What other workforce related topic would you love to solve if you could wave your magic wand today? Retention. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other?
Ramp-up time.
How fast to get them up to speed? Absolutely. All right, my name is Melissa Boutwell. I am the president of a company called Automation Strategy and Performance. And the topic today is clearly about solving workforce problems, but I want to explain just a little bit about our company and a tidbit about my background so that you understand how we approach the subject, right? Because there are a lot of different topics out there around workforce. Our company is a strategic planning organization that helps companies in our industry focus on the strategies that are going to get performance in their workforce. That's all we do. We work with very large companies, some of the largest, general contractors in the US. We work with OEMs like Distech Controls. We work with lots of systems integrators across the country. But what is really unique is that we also have a very huge presence in the OEM end client world as well. Not the OEM, but the end user client world as well. Right now, we have hundreds of people that work within hospitals, universities, and work at the final owner site, learning how to become qualified and, that type of thing. But workforce challenges are everywhere in our supply chain. It's not just those of us that are convened here, it's our end customer. They have problems as well. So that's what we do. If we look at what the strategic workforce roadmap looks like, what is the roadmap to solve this problem? I've been coming to these events for decades, as many of you might have been, and it is always an issue. Last year, I spoke at AHR in 2020. It was opening day. It was a crowd full of people, and it was people from mechanical systems. It was contractors, manufacturers, engineers. It was all different types of verticals there. But in this room, we are talking about from an automated buildings point of view, what are our priorities? So as an organization, this has been our focus. The first priority is to fill persistently vacant positions. Raise your hand if you're concerned about persistently vacant positions that you just cannot get filled. All right. The second is how do we fill those positions and we get people up to speed predictively and as quickly and efficiently as possible. Just like Kim said, we've got to get that productivity up. But then back in the back, we have our representative from Kentucky who's really concerned about retention. We've got to keep our best people because the fact that we are so short of people means that our very best people in your organization, they're spread thin. They're running hard and our organizations are already lean. So how are we going to address that? And the last thing we started working on several years ago, and it is even more of an important issue today, is how do we manage rising labor costs? Is there anybody in here that's concerned about rising costs? All right. So when you look at this from a C-suite level, how on earth are you going to proactively manage that in a predictable way? So one of the things that we do in our organization, you cannot do strategic planning without data, all right? And in our industry, just to give you just a snip of my background, I started out in the late 80s in advanced manufacturing. And in advanced manufacturing, process controls and industrial controls, you have a very predictable process. Yes, it was complicated. Yes, there were things that we had to do to automate that process, but there was no confusion about what that process was going to include. In our industry, our processes may vary by job, it may vary by the building, and it is a real challenge to make sure that you're predicting the people that you need and to be able to forecast those vacancies. And so when you think about forecasting vacancies, you have to think about volume. What is it that we need, and what are the quantities of what we need? How are we going to plan for these positions that we need to fill? In our efforts to fill positions, sometimes it's challenging when you have a room full of people that say, I just want qualified workers, right? I mean, it's easy. I just want people that are qualified. But you over here, you might be thinking about an engineering role, and we might have someone over here in Texas that's thinking about a frontline, automation technician role. And when you look at all those different pieces, how do we dose the content to prepare the workers for what it is that they need to be doing? And so we have to look at proportionality. Traditionally, we have worked to try and promote people up through our organizations. We might have found people that were in the trades that were really great mechanics or really good electricians. They had a little bit of a fire in their belly to carry a laptop, and they started applying for positions with integrators. In the past, that was one of the best things that we had to make sure we had a steady flow and pipeline. Today, that flow and pipeline is drying up, and you all know it. And we don't have enough mechanics, and we don't have enough electricians in the first place. So it's very difficult to pull them out of that for that entry-level role. Then who are we going to put in there? If we need to hire people to go into these positions, who are they going to be? And what is the specification? If we're going to build a job, if we're going to build a system, we have some kind of guideline. We've got some kind of, understanding of what it is that we're building. What does that look like from a workforce perspective? So what we've done in collaboration with industry partners or all throughout this building, some of you may have attended the Coalition for Smarter Buildings event earlier. We have had to define what are these occupations so that we get noticed by federal agencies, so that we get noticed by the departments of education, so that you get resources that you need to be able to make a difference for your company. And the way we had to start doing that is to clarify exactly what it is we do. What are the occupations in our industry? Well, they categorize them in two ways. We have off-site roles and on-site roles. And those on-site roles are really broken up into 4 different buckets. And then we have the off-site roles. And I'm going to talk about those I think I was going to talk about them. But let me go back. I know why it's not doing it now. Because I had it so it was animated. So if we think about that control specialist in that gray box, this is the historical position that was our pipe and wire person. And this was the foundation of the individual that installed the physical infrastructure. But today we have something that is also called an automation specialist, which is that entry-level software technician. And it's that person that takes over at startup and carries that job through commissioning. And they're mostly focused on new installations and retrofits and new projects, but they're not necessarily a service specialist. And they're not necessarily a full system specialist because it takes a lot more knowledge about those systems to be able to work with existing buildings. I mean, unraveling the difficulties with legacy migrations and buildings that may even have more than one version of your system in it. So that service specialist is going to have extra skills and more additional training. Then when we look at the off-site roles, if this were animated, can y'all see that? If this were animated, you would see that the integration specialist is that first role. Now, we're not calling it a design engineer because some of our standards with the Department of Labor They frown on us calling it engineer if in any state there's a licensing requirement before you use the word engineer. In many of the states there are. And as most of us in this room know, there's not really a PE program cranking out excellent design engineers for our industry. So when we look at this and we have to define what is that graduate engineering role that comes straight out of a college program, has their degree, maybe passed their FE, and now you want to put them into a design role, what do we call them? And what is it that they're learning to do? And in our industry, we've toyed with calling it a lot of things. In some companies, it may be senior programmer. Another company, it may be, a design specialist. It may be a lot of different things. But here, we know the industry is moving towards being an integration specialist because there are a lot of different things that they have to understand beyond the traditional hierarchy of software and hardware. But there are other roles. If we look at today, if I just take my voicemails and my emails and the pain, and you measure the pain in our industry, where is the pain? If we're not talking about those field technician roles that we absolutely know we have pain in, where's the pain in the offsite roles? We hear all the time, our project managers are dying, they're overloaded, they're managing so many projects. And it takes so many years to put them in the crock pot coming up through the ranks for them to be fully qualified to help run a project. So then what if there is a way for us to quicken that process? What if there is a way to teach people the skills that they need to support a senior project manager and to begin being apprenticed for that role? In our industry, there's two ways that we've brought project managers in. We have either given them a track A, they've come in because they have excellent technical skills. They have done jobs beautifully. They've been helping to lead labor on the job site. And now we need to give them those business skills and those project management skills, those client-facing contract management skills. And let's not forget, we have to be able to manage multiple contracts, multiple projects simultaneously with excellence. And change on a dime. So those skills we have to be able to give the people that had excellent technical skills, and those are very different skills. But what about the fact that we might be able to bring people that are just on the edge of our industry that have good project management skills and they have technical capability, they just don't know our products or they just don't know exactly our process? That's track B. Those are the two ways that we have been solving this problem historically. And so if we wanted to do that more rapidly and to do it for a particular company, how would we do that? What is the specification? How are we going to get you your qualified workers? We can't solve showing up on time, but if we can help you get them there. So then we have to have a place to start because this is a lot of work, guys. All right. But if we look at this from where is the biggest pain? Today in this building, there are hundreds of seminars that are talking about how to do fault diagnostics, how to really move the needle to understand what's happening in your systems, or these systems that have artificial intelligence, or these that know machine learning and all the different technologies. But what are we doing to understand our workforce? And to be able to solve our workforce with similar tools and with similar processes that we know technically from our own experience. We know that we have to solve that frontline entry-level software technician role first. If we do not solve that, we are losing the battle everywhere because we're not going to design engineer our way out of the workforce problem. At the end of the day, somebody has to execute billable work. And right now, we have companies all over the country that are suffering at a large scale with hundreds of vacancies when you roll them up. So in doing that, how do we fill persistent vacancies? Well, we know that we absolutely must become very good at something that we have not been good at as an industry. How do we hire eligible people, but they're unqualified on day one and you know it? Because all of us want to hire that person that's got 2 to 3 years of experience. We all want that, but we're all competing with each other for them. And if you actually get one on the market, you may not want them because they're going to leave you for 50 cents more an hour, just like they're leaving their current job. So how do you grow your own? The only way to grow your own is to transform eligible candidates into qualified candidates. To do that, there are a couple of ingredients. You have to have a good spec for what a qualified candidate is. Now, how many of you feel like you've got an extra 40 hours in your month to dedicate to the process of defining what you need to teach your people? Y'all got extra hours laying around, not enough to do? All right. I will tell you that I've been working in this industry for over 30 years. And I started out in advanced manufacturing until we shipped all of the plants overseas. We sent all the manufacturing over there. I didn't want to live in Malaysia. So then I came back and I decided, okay, I'm going to work in SCADA systems and utilities because nobody's shipping toilets overseas. All right, we're always going to have power plants. We're always going to have water systems. We're always going to have wastewater. And I spent about 15 years in the SCADA industry doing distributed control systems for utilities. And in that process, in a period of just 15 years, the wells started drying up. And then I decided to go back to work as the building owner. And the place where I managed systems was the sister counterpart of this where we were in 2020, the Orange County Convention Center. So as the director of utilities and operations strategy there, I started to understand that the owner has the same problem. It's not just the systems integrator. It's not just the contractor. There are no people out there that understand these systems. And when you look at how you're going to transform eligible into unqualified, we really do need some kind of industry spec. So how are we going to do that? The other thing is that let's just assume that you have a good spec and you know what you want to teach them, all right? You've got a good training curriculum, you've got a good spec on what a qualified person needs to know. Less than 10% of students or learners that start self-paced online programs finish. Less than 10%. It's a fact, all right? And when you look at our educational systems in general, whether you're talking about a 4-year program or a 2-year program, this is a 2-year program. I took a time that I went back to be a professor. I said, okay, well, the solution is just to go out and start teaching people. Well, there are not enough programs in this country to do what we need to do because of this number. This number means that if everybody in this room started a 2-year program to become a certified technician and associate's degree program, only 30% would finish in 5 years of a 2-year program. All right. So if we were running our businesses with that level of scrap rate and you had to have that much more come in just to get a predictable flow on the outside, would you be removing heat? Are you going to be able to remove heat from your customers' buildings if you have no idea what the flow rate of water is going through those systems? No. So if we look at it from a workforce perspective, we know we have to have a sustainable flow that is predictable, that's measurable, that you can plan your businesses on. You don't want to go out there and take on new work and grow your territory if you can't count on having people to execute the work. Well, there is one solution that we've studied that's out there that's getting 90% completion rates. Well, holy cow. What do we need to learn about the 90% completion rates? What we learn is that 90% completion rates are in apprenticeship programs. Now, how many of you in here think that apprenticeship programs are what the construction trades do? They do. But how many of you know that it is how biotechnology, IT, and every hospital in America is addressing their shortages? Did you know that? Did you know that the majority of apprenticeships in the United States today are employer-driven programs that have nothing to do with construction? Did you know that the fastest growing apprenticeships in the United States today, growing at 71% growth rate, are IT-based apprenticeships? So I said, we got to have one of those, all right? And the challenge is, yep, come to you, I promise I will.
No problem.
But the challenge is IT enough? All right, no. because our operational technology world is different. We have a lot in common, and we are sharing our space quite a bit. But raise your hand if you think there's an awful lot to learn about what we do for a living. Nobody? Stand up for your crap. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you need to learn, and it's all important. So what does that look in a professional apprenticeship program that's designed to hire people graduating from college, that's designed to put your company in the front seat of recruitment because the colleges get special credit for placing people in your program? So when you think about that, there's a secret sauce. And what we know about studying apprenticeship programs is there are a couple things that really make a difference. Now, energy systems are critical to achieve flow. If you don't have energy to get flow to happen, is flow going to occur? Are y'all that tired?
Only passive lines.
Y'all are exhausted. All right. So we have to have flow. We just agreed to that, which means we got to have a little bit of power going into this flow. And where is that power coming from? And one of the things that we have learned is entering an apprenticeship program is an agreement. And it is an opportunity to actually achieve something of measurable, enduring value. But there is an ingredient that comes into the beginning of it that is self-assessment and reflection. Because the carrot at the end of the apprenticeship, whatever it is there are predictable pay increases that are planned. They're based on achievement. They're based on completion. And in the programs that we are working with in our company and then in this industry that are being established for this industry, they're competency based. And the reason that's significant is because people can progress at the flow rate that they're capable. And that capability is significant. So if you look at this, and let's just say that name a task. Somebody name a task that's important to do if you're an entry-level software tech. Just one task. Somebody.
Building trends.
Okay, excellent. Building trends. So we're going to ask, how confident are you in knowing not only how to build trends, when you should build trends, what's the proper time to build trends, and where trends live, and how you're going to actually see and experience trends, and then who needs access to trends? Well, do they know and do they have confidence in their capability to be able to execute that work? And does that matter? If someone says, I have no idea how to build trends, I have no experience with building trends, but I know now that as a part of this apprenticeship program, I need to know how to build trends. And my carrot at the end of the stick is this, promotional opportunity, and I need to master trends. And here's my checklist of things that I need to learn. But what if you have somebody, you know how to build trends, all right? So if you've got somebody that's going through this assessment and they've got experience on that, how do you acknowledge and figure out the people that actually already have some experience and be able to modulate instead of taking everything at a constant volume? What we've learned in our industry and what we've applied in our technology about being able to modulate, being able to actuate is critical when we apply it to our workforce. And when you look at what that incoming knowledge is from a school, this is a cute example. So this was just one group of people. One company had hired people from graduating from a college program. And so you give them the opportunity to assess themselves on being able to apply mechanical science. Well, that's a good thing to be able to apply mechanical science. And you can see that there's a lot of blue on this board. They felt very confident. They just graduated from a mechanical engineering program at a respectable university. They felt very confident in their skills to apply mechanical theory. All right. But when you look at the detail of where they apply that, then you see that confidence evaporate. All right. Just as if it was evaporating off your cooling towers. All right. Because the issue there is now you've asked me something specific. Now you've asked me about a task that I'm actually going to have to do. And when that task is based on being able to do it with confidence by yourself and not having to call your buddy or not having to get some help, but being able to go and have one truck roll and be able to do it one time yourself and get it done, then you start seeing a lot more, I need help and I don't have enough experience with this task. So now, if you know they got the carrot at the other end of the stick, you've got some energy invested in this to want to become qualified and to want to gather, to want to be able to master that, to be able to make the progress. Now let's talk about soft skills. I'm gonna pick on you, Chad. So on James Dice's show, that fun day, we had that conversation. You opened with this opening question. Melissa, they wanna know, what is more important, soft skills or technical skills? And on that day, the answer was, well, that's a little bit like asking which direction of movement on the actuator is more important. All right? It depends, right? It depends on the set point. It depends on where you are right now and the application. And so, you know, it depends, but we can't ignore soft skills. Soft skills has to be a part of the ingredient. Now, this is really cute. This is where it starts getting really fun and the data is very revealing. Is there anybody in here that thinks it's important that your employees that are on your customer site have communication skills that don't make people mad? All right, raise your hands. All right, so this is what's really cute. If you look at this black area right here, this is how many of that entry-level crop out of a college said, it's not applicable to my job. I'm not required to know my customer. I'm not required to communicate with my customer. I don't think that the other trades on the job site are my customer. Those kinds of things can bring your job to a screeching halt as fast as not knowing what an actuator is. So we have to make sure that we at least acknowledge that and we figure out how to help. And then when you look at what the application of that is, there's often a scenario where there are times when we think we're really good at something and we might not be as good at something. You know, my husband helps me with that a lot. You know, we think we've got something mastered and there's just maybe a little bit more that we need to learn. How do you have those conversations with today's generation? Today's generation is a little different. It's a little unique. My generation was different. I remember in the late 80s and things that they were saying about our generation back then, and it's always going to be the same. But the important ingredient is that we need to be listening. And one of my favorite comments that Ken Sinclair has is that we have to be apprenticed and learn from the newer generation as well. So these are some of the insights that help with that. The other secret sauce of apprenticeship is mentors. Now, in doing classroom exercises, okay, let's just go back to setting up a college program and being a professor in a college. So in a lab-based program, teaching automation controls in a college setting, how many of you think that graduates from a college program are going to succeed based on their grades alone? Nobody. That is why mentors are so important. There were people that came through my program, and again, I've had my time on a bucket, I've had my time on a laptop, I've had my time in sales, I've had my time in project management, but at the end of the day, there's a lot more than knowing stuff up here than being really good at something. And the challenge is it's the observation of that key mentor at your company at where it really happens. And that is one of the things that people in this generation are craving significantly. They want somebody who's going to take responsibility to help them learn. So when you look at mentors, this is just one small batch. This is a set of leaders. We asked this batch of leaders, I haven't included any names in here. We have some really excellent clients, but we asked the question, how many of you, well, we didn't say how many of you, but in our surveys, we said, rate the importance of mentors and mentorship skills to the success of developing new entry-level employees. And across the board, they stated that it was absolutely critical, which is a 10. And occasionally somebody would make it a 9. So it ended up at 9.5. But then we asked the reciprocal of that. How confident are you in your frontline teams in having mentorship skills that will be able to help transform entry-level people into the workforce you need? And that's where the confidence fell off. And so building mentorship systems within your organization is absolutely critical to success. And this is where some of the most exciting work that we're doing today in companies across the country are really starting to get real success, because we can create content. You know, we've got a cloud-based user interface, and we've got instructors. We got 14 instructors. We got people over, you know, at AHR right now. But at the end of the day, it's your best people that really are going to make the difference, that are going to know whether or not they're progressing like they need to, and that are going to create the stickiness to make them want to stay. So if we look at the priority alignment and the kind of feedback that mentors need, these graphs will show on the top is what the mentors and leaders said were important, and on the bottom is what those new workers thought was important. And so being able to align and help those mentors succeed, and then to mine for mentors and find out on those groups of people that think they have those expertise, the skills to do it, then how many of them believe that right now they're qualified to be mentors and would like to be mentors? Or how many of them feel that they should be able to teach on that subject? Because we know that for retention, and for those of you that are really, really focused on retaining employees, we have enormous consistency across the board that those individuals that feel the most stuck in their job because they can't progress is usually because they have not been able to build a replacement for themselves. And they become so valuable in their current position that their management and their leadership team cannot conceive of letting them move into another role. And so we don't have a mechanism right now for helping those people that are your best people solve their own biggest problem. That they want advancement at your company and they shouldn't have to go work for someone else. But how do they solve the problem, and how do we get to the bottom of the issue? So if we retain the best people, we also need alarms for our organization. You know, and I caution myself to use alarms because I know we've gone a lot further than alarms. I understand all that, all right? But if we just had a simple alarm that says you have someone who is a turnover risk, and you had the fault diagnostics that are consistently right, unfortunately, that it is an issue, would you as a senior leader, after having made a big investment in workforce recruitment and workforce training and development, would you like to have a little bit of advanced warning so that you might be able to intercede before you lose them? You know, and those types of issues. If you have people on your team today that feel underutilized when everybody else feels like they're working themselves to death, would that be valuable information? You know, and believe it or not, people leave for being underutilized, not just for being overutilized. So figuring out what those overall dashboard and retention risks are so that we can come back to our primary goal. These are things that having an apprenticeship model as a solution pulls these things together. Now, I have had a lot of chatter. I really want to use the rest of our time for interactive discussions and questions. And you asked something earlier, and I asked you if you would just wait for a little bit because I might forget my rhythm. So is this a good time?
Yes. When you were talking about a 90% retention rate for people that have gone through
completion rate.
Completion rate. Okay, that answers that question.
But there is a 94% retention rate published by the Department of Labor for people who complete apprenticeship programs.
Over how long a period of
I
time?
have no idea.
Okay.
That's why it's not on here, but it's, they publish it, they claim it, it's in their statistics. But the goal is to be able to help people finish the specification. It's like being able to sign off a job. It is like the most frustrating thing to not be able to close a job out, right? If you've got a punch list. So how do you close out with your new employee and get them fully up to speed and say, yep, you're qualified, you're good to go? But that's a great question. Did I answer it? Okay, all right. What other great questions are there out here? Is this information interesting, or is this just been a good chair to sit in to get out of the show floor?
I have a question. So you mentioned that people are already doing this. Do you have some names of organizations that have this, or is there a program I see that you have a dashboard? Is this something you can?
That's an excellent question. So I started off the presentation by saying our company is a strategic planning and performance management company. So we are hired by large companies, usually to solve broad issues. Some examples of that would be very happy for me to say that they are our clients. A lot of our clients are kind of private, but Distech Controls is an OEM. Distech Controls, we began working with Distech Controls 2 years ago, and we began helping them create solutions that would be available to their partners. So now all Distech Controls partners have access to the results of that effort. That's one example. Another great example is J.E. Dunn Construction. They have their aptitude division that is focused on smart infrastructure and master systems integration. They hired us and have been working on solutions similar. But as you can see, they're two completely different companies. One is an integration team inside a general contractor, still in the smart building space. So their solutions aren't the same, but it's still focused on the very same problems. We have other organizations that, like large cancer centers. We've got a project in Florida where Moffitt Cancer Centers is working to solve the fact that they've got, workforce vacancies. We have large universities. So there's a variety of different ones.
You say you create an algorithm for how to deal with it?
I love that question. So the first thing that we have focused on is diagnosing the issues. And where we are today is that we know that the math behind these numbers is pretty good. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that there's not room to tune those loops. There is. But we have been able to give enough companies enough insights that they've been able to mitigate things that would have been a lot more frustrating had they not had the insights. In terms of solving them, there's the second step. Okay, so now you have the program. How do you actually solve the program? How do you solve the issues? We know that, number one, we have information that's not up here right now, but when we recruit using this apprenticeship model, we're not recruiters. We don't do recruiting, so to speak, but we help empower recruiters. So if you're a recruiter, today this would be one of the very best tools that you could use. But we know that students coming into our program have very high enthusiasm ratings and are dramatically higher than they were when we first started doing traditional training from a traditional point of view back in 2018. So when we look at the current effort and the current enthusiasm, the current pace, the current flow rates, we know we've made substantial improvements over the past, 4 years. But we're still working, in algorithms for people, I know.
I understand.
Yeah. But there's some good directions. But that was a really good question. Yes.
You mentioned you have a few specs for different positions. Are those specs available for people who want to develop their own programs or opt them?
It depends on what you're asking for. So what we have are occupational standards. And so we have some things that would be available, but every company is going to need to tune it a little bit to their needs. So, there are going to be, I'll put it this way, it's a little bit like having a broad guideline and then you choosing the ones that are most important for you. You're welcome to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. I have cards up here that have, a way to just fill out a questionnaire and tell me your biggest problem if there's something you'd like, and that would be a good example of something to follow up with me on. What other comments and questions do you have?
Just some comments. We've had experienced some same success with the apprenticeship approach through the college. In the past, I've partnered with colleges to create programs. The comments from the colleges in Arizona, we got involved with where most of the company, they're being hired before they finish the program.
They are.
So it's they can't even get enrollment at the college level. But we have, through the Builders Alliance, which is a construction alliance association, put them through an apprentice program. Right now it's an electrical program. Right. So my question there is, I know you made comments in the earlier session that you had success with the Department of Labor. So as to get some of these job codes added.
Yep. And you're in Arizona, right?
You have on taking the next step to try and modify those apprentice programs in the builder's trade and get them registered with the state.
I love that question. I love that question. So my response may be a little controversial, but it took a long time for me to come to this conclusion. All right. And one of the reasons why I'm really thankful and blessed to be sharing this topic in this room. Last time I was sponsored by Women in HVAC, which I love. It was wonderful. But the diversity of companies in there and the focus of what our company does, it is really on smart infrastructure. We are very focused on smart infrastructure. And the challenge is this. You have programs out there that are working very well, right? And they're working really well to supply people for certain occupations. What we're proposing is that we are doing this for our occupations and our industry to sit on top of that and to be able to connect to that and to be interoperable with that. But what we're not going to do is go mess up a perfectly good thing by trying to insert ourselves into it. And there are so many different labor-related challenges around the country. Here, Grant, take one of these.
Thank you so much, man.
That we have to be very sensitive to the chemistry that's working in a local area. And, we have a lot of companies that have, very heavy union organizations. We have others that don't. And the programs that are working, we want them to keep working. We just want to bring what's missing. So what we do, you're in Arizona, we're working with the state of Arizona right now to be able to define what that looks like for citizens of Arizona. And in Arizona, there is going to be the ability to be able to determine if someone in one of those programs would like to matriculate to ours before they finish it all the way. One of the challenges is, and we were meeting with, a client earlier, that when they finish a full 4-year program in a mechanical trade or an electrical trade and they become a fully qualified worker, they're almost too expensive then to go start at the bottom and start learning things at the very bottom. Right, and that's the problem. We have lots of mechanical contractors. Yeah, I mean, they're bread and butter for us. But the challenge is what we've had to do for those clients is to find solutions that give them the ability to identify those that have the aptitude and the interest to perhaps do well in this industry and give them a very clear pathway where they're still with an apprenticeship, but they just finish their apprenticeship in these skill sets. So that's what we're doing right now, because I actually think those programs are working really well. The other model that we have is in the biotechnology world. I spent a lot of time studying what those programs were looking like, because I had to step out and say, all right, well, nurses teach people to do things, and, ultrasound technicians have to operate equipment, and they have to, it's important that they know what they're doing. I don't want them doing one on me if they don't know what they're doing, but they had an apprenticeship model that was a little different than the construction trades. And so we learned a lot from them as well. And a lot of the IT organizations that have done a great job of building, turnkey apprenticeships. That's a really fantastic question. So does the interoperability side answer your question? Nobody's asked me about managing rising labor costs. My C-suite clients are very concerned about that. Is anybody concerned about that?
Of course, it's skyrocketing.
Sure. Hold it back.
All right, so you can't hold it back, but you can do several things. And I, like many people in our industry, accidentally fell into automation industry. I started out as an economist. My background is microeconomics and the efficiency of the firm. And I started out in manufacturing, helping to understand the optimization mechanisms for manufacturing in the days of Sam Walton before NAFTA. And when it was transferred out, I started applying those skills to the SCADA industry. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is that, automation systems for me were the tools of the craft. It was how you optimize. It's how you establish the things that you wanted to do. It was the tools. But when we look at that from a labor perspective, and you look at how you define rising labor costs, we have right now a very large systems integrator that's a client. They're in many states. And one of the challenges is breaking out where those true rising costs are. How much of it's going to be in inefficiency and how much of it is in direct wages. In apprenticeship, one of the ways that you have the ability to manage that is that you actually have a seat at being able to say, all right, here's what you will be worth when you're qualified. Here's what you're worth today when you're eligible. And yes, you will make this amount of money and you will be able to get here, but here's the breadcrumb trail. Here are the steps that we need to get to. You need to finish this material. You need to learn this. You need to demonstrate these competencies, and then you get a bump. And you need to go to the next level, and then you get a bump. Rather than having strictly certification knowledge-based credentials, in order to be able to teach in the college system, you have to have a certain number of degrees, and degrees are the credentialing mechanism. And I was fortunate that I had just the minimum to be able to be a professor in the college system, but I wasn't a PhD. So even though I might know a little bit in our industry, when I participated in the college programs, I didn't have the pretty little robe that has the colors and the tassels and all that kind of stuff. I looked like the squeeb, And so when you think about that in terms of credentialing people that are in our workforce, what does that look like, And if you're coming into a different industry, how do we pull them out of other industries, upskill them, and have a predictable cost? So because of the work we've done with the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, we have wage tables for every single one of these roles that I showed you up here for every city and every state in the U.S. And what is different about this is that it's based on skill comparably. So it's not just that you're competing with other people who do what you do. You're competing with other people who recognize our skills outside of our industry. And they're coming after us. They're coming after our best people. We know that the top tech firms are hiring. We know that, I had a client that called because Amazon was now, running ads, radio ads right there where he's like, oh my gosh, And so the challenge is that how do you have an equivalent that's going to let you know where the vacuum is, where it's pulling from. So we have those wage tables that are indexed by occupation and that are relative to every single city in the nation. So if you're opening a branch in Mississippi, You're not necessarily going to have the same wage rates as you would in Miami, Florida, or New York City. And it's already taken those things into account, and they're pretty good because they're not indexed to me or our company. They're indexed to the actual IRS tax data and however else, the Department of Labor figures all that stuff out. So it is a very good step forward. And if you know what your end game is, and you know what your upper control limit is, and you know what your lower control limit is, you know what your budget is, and you know who's coming after those employees, then you can plan. But the other factor is then you can also make sure that the training is teaching them the things that you need them to do to make them efficient at your organization. And that is not necessarily the same thing as canned training that you would get in any program. Being efficient in your organization may have some very unique factors to it that you want them to learn a particular way of doing something. So those ingredients are how we're helping larger organizations predict and be proactive, hire in with an apprenticeship model for professional positions that have a breadcrumb trail to success, and have some kind of planned conditions before you get hit up for pay raises.
And where do you say you can find this matrix? Or is it something you guys hold?
The matrix, yeah, you can come get a card. You can reach out, yeah. The actual data that we have that's available to our clients because it is. There's a lot of billable hours. It's gone into that, baby. A lot of billable hours, but it is, from an industry perspective, the good news is that it is doable. And as an industry, we for just 3 clients, we have been able to get almost $1 million in grant funding to support their hiring programs. So, we've got very substantial recognition from the Department of Labor and other organizations for us to be able to start attracting for specific employers what they need to be able to build their specific program for their company.
And you guys apply for the grants for them as a client kind of?
I mean, it's a service line that we have, and we have people that are experts in doing that, and so far they have a pretty high win ratio. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I love this industry. I mean, I absolutely love the work we do. We are the coolest people on the planet, and nobody knows about us. And so figuring out how we help prepare the next generation so that those of us that will be retiring can do so and look back on the last season of our retirement, being able to have prepared a new generation and a system for that. Questions? Scale, was this a good use of time? All right. I would love to connect. I would love to meet you. I know things are busy and everybody's got a place to go, but I'm going to leave these up here. But it is an honor to serve you in our industry. And I want to thank Ken Sinclair and Scott Cochran and Automated Buildings for giving me an opportunity to visit with you tonight. And I hope you have a great show.